For every blog post I write, I use a blog post template. And this is what it looks like. So for every article, every blog post, I have a headline, and then I have an anecdote or a nut graph, which is 2 to 4 sentences. If you don't know what an anecdote or a nut graph is, don't worry, we're going to go into that in just a moment. And then I transition to the body copy, 1 to 2 sentences, and then I make my supportive points for my main idea. And then I have a closing paragraph that's 1 to 3 sentences, and then a closing sentence that's punchy and powerful and it calls people to action. And so to give you an idea of what this actually looks like in my word processor, I'll actually switch to that screen, and this is what it looks like. And so we have the headline options we made, but from there I have some just placeholders for my main idea, which we'll go into, and then the nut graph or the anecdote. For this specific one, we're actually just going to use a nut graph and not an anecdote. And then I have my supportive points here. And then I have a placeholder for my closing paragraph and my call to action. So let's actually go into what these things mean and what they look like. So an anecdote and a nut graph. An anecdote is a personal story that connects to the big idea of your blog post. This is one of the biggest secrets to communication. If you want people to buy into your blog post, to buy into your idea, then you need to use a story that connects them to it in a personal way. And so an example of this is I one time wrote an article about the 5 lies I used to believe about being a Christian. To start that article, I told a story about how I went to a church that taught me differently than I'd been taught growing up. And it was an eye-opening experience. Everything was new and different. It opened my mind to a different side of my faith. And so I used that personal story to bring people in, to show them where I was coming from and where I was going. Another example of starting an article, a technique you can use, is called a nut graph. A nut graph is the main idea of your article described in a nutshell introductory paragraph. So a nut graph is just short for a nutshell paragraph. And it's really about just focusing on the main idea of your article and breaking it down about what your reader can expect as they read your article. Both of these are effective. You don't always have to do a personal story. You don't always have to use a nut graph. You can kind of choose which one works best for your article. But those are 2 different ways you can start any article. The next thing is a transitional sentence. So to go from your introductory paragraph and your supportive points and into the main body of your work and the main body of your blog post, you need a transitional sentence. This can be easily overlooked, but it's so important because it's what helps move your reader from the big main idea to the supporting details. You're going to get from the big idea to the supporting details, and a transitional sentence helps you do that. The next thing is your supportive points. Your supportive points establishes the meaning and the value of your blog post. It's what adds validity to your big idea. If it's all big idea, no one will actually be able to latch onto it because there'll be no support for it. So you establish the main idea in your introductory paragraph, whether it's through story, whether it's through a nutshell paragraph, either way, you establish that, but then you move into supportive points. You tell people why you believe what you believe about your idea. You're sharing ideas through your blog post. And so your supportive points is where you make your point. And then finally, a closing paragraph. A closing paragraph helps remind your reader of the big idea. And so like I mentioned, you establish the big idea up top. You establish it in that introductory paragraph, whether it's through story or a nutshell paragraph. You establish that big idea. You make your supportive points. And then you close it all out by reminding your reader of the big idea. You have to remind your reader because it's so easy to move on from your big idea up top and then forget about it at the bottom and not reiterate your point. But you need to reiterate your point so that they know what to take action on, so they know what to believe moving forward. You're sharing ideas. You believe in what you wrote. The closing paragraph is where you close the deal. It's where you convince people to take action. It's where you convince people to move forward with a different mindset, with a different perspective. is where you convince people to share your article, to buy into it, to get on board with your idea. So I want to encourage you to, as you build out your blog post, to use this template. You can stray from it a little bit, but I would definitely use this template to build out the structure of your article, and that's exactly what we're going to do in these next sections.